Hello, my name is Natalie Zacharias, and this is episode 4 of the Cosmic Earth Conversations. I'm here with my dear, dear, dear friend, Liv Mokai Wheeler, and we are happy to connect with you all today and share this space and time with you. Before we get started, Liv, I would love if you would introduce yourself and share whatever is on your heart at the moment.
Oh, well, let me see. Greetings to you, whoever you are that is listening. And yeah, I'm Liv Mokai Wheeler. And let me see what's on my heart right now this morning. Um, yeah, just excited to connect and yeah, just whatever wants to unfold. I'm here to flow with it. It's always nice to connect with you, Natalie, as you're mentioning beforehand. So we shall see what comes.
So Liv, for those of you who do not know, she is a Kontomble. She's many things, and one of the things that she does in this lifetime is a Kontomble Voice Diviner. And I have experienced many many ceremonies in this lifetime with Liv, and I imagine many many in many different lifetimes. And it's such a beautiful. I mean, I'm so happy to be able to connect with you on here and to share with you with the people who will be tuning into this conversation. And something that I love about whenever Liv and I connect is we go and walk into the unknown together. And so, one of the intentions for this series and this episode in particular is, for us to be able to show up and share what is on our hearts and things that are we've been experiencing, thinking, things that have been inspiring us, in the hopes that it is supportive for you, the viewer, and whatever it is that you're going through. And I think something that we were talking about beforehand is our awareness of how there's just so much happening right now and has been for quite some time. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm curious if there's anything you want to share about that, Liv. And yeah.
I guess what I continue to feel, I don't know, it's like, yeah, any given day, it feels like there's so much going on in people's individual lives or in the collective. And also my awareness continues, or spirit continues to bring my awareness to the way that how we be with our own personal experience in it, or how we be in our own process of alchemy is also how we relate to the collective energy and how we might be supportive to it through,
Yeah.
maybe starting with our individual alchemy, and then that ripples outwards. And um and also it feels, I don't know, I guess I've felt really for the last 9 months, I think, as a lot of people have felt, that it seems to be the collective energy. It seems to steadily be moving through, maybe uh, some people call it fourth dimension, and then sometimes like there's experiences of fifth, maybe fourth being with more tumultuous energy.
Yeah.
Because, as some people talk about it, it's kind of like a spiritual battle that's been
Yeah.
um, existing or coming to a head or something like that. So mm, yeah, it feels, I just continue to notice that it feels so true that whatever kind of, if we can stabilize our frequency, then
Yeah.
we're potentially not only aware of like the hardships and everything that people are experiencing, but also be in touch enough with the uplifting energy and all the spiritual support that is there, also trying to support the collective through this passageway. um,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I continue to feel aware of, is just been kind of like working on the stabilization of the frequency
Yeah.
to um, to to try to at least be stable in the energy and try to, we were talking about this before too, trying to stay out of like reactive energy, because it seems like that's also kind of been the norm as these really strong emotional currents, and
Yeah.
like you're maybe seen as a jerk if you don't get, you know, caught up
Yeah.
in the current, just like these big emotional waves.
Yeah.
And so just, you know, becoming more and more comfortable with being uh like an outsider if I need to be an outsider in order
Yeah.
to stabilize my frequency, to stabilize, to ground my energy,
Yeah.
and to just get more and more comfortable with that. Um, I think you probably catch my drift.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting because as you were speaking, I was thinking of like all these things that you and Kontomble, who I would actually like to talk about who the Kontomble are for those who may be listening who don't know who the Kontomble are, because that feels like essential to this
Oh
conversation,
yeah.
and and also essential to like why I call this talk cosmic, um,
Mm,
because it is very much an ode to them in that
mm,
way for me, and so some things like practices that I've learned from you and also from them is, you know, I mean, making offerings to my ancestors has been huge, and like helping my ancestors transition. So the ancestors who have been stuck and who didn't fully transition into the what for me feels like the ancestral realm.
mm.
Actually, picture what is that movie in Black Panther when he there's a part in the movie where he goes to like the realm of the ancestors, and
Oh,
he like is in what I imagine the ancestor realm probably looks like.
oh wow.
Uh, and it's a really I'll send you like the a clip of it. It's really
Oh
beautiful the
yeah,
way that it
wow. I didn't realize that was in that film.
yeah, it's really beautiful the way that they did depict it,
Oh wow.
and so it's those ancestors who haven't fully transitioned to them. You know, something that has been such a impactful lesson for me is like learning how to support them in that way, and I find
Mm,
that because of that practice and like having the intention of like, you know, you introduced me to emotion code, and that has been such a beautiful practice for
mm,
me to like work on myself and to offer it for others, and that's another way of helping support ancestors
mm,
like release the traumas that they experienced. And
mm.
so that has been an essential practice for me to be able to um, like anchor into
Yeah.
when chaos is happening around, because you know you were talking about like being able to call on your spiritual guides and support.
Mm,
I feel like our ancestors are such a big part of that.
for
Like we
sure.
all have really beautiful, whether they're, you know, a few generations back, or you often talk about our ancient ancestors, you know,
Mhm.
the original ones, and they are the ones that Gaia called in to
Mhm.
come here, you know.
Mm,
And so I feel like that has been such a supportive practice, and even just like making offerings, like having a practice of making offerings. Before this call, like off camera, there's a bowl of offerings there. I was like, oh, I have to make offerings today. We're going to join with the sacred and
mm,
create together. And
mm,
so that's something that has been really beautiful, because when things get like chaotic, or you know, I'm not sure what's going to happen, or I'm feeling flustered, or I'm getting overwhelmed, like things like that, those practices have helped so much in anchoring. I'm like, okay, yes, and
mm,
I can choose to get swept up into the storm that's occurring,
mm,
or I can take myself out for a moment and like reclaim my sovereignty again.
mm,
And you know, whether it's making offerings to the earth, whether it's making offerings to my ancestors,
mm.
whether it's like looking at my own stuff and healing it, you know. And I thank you, and I thank the Contemplate for teaching me those things, because I feel like
Oh,
they've been
thank
such
you.
so instrumental to my healing process, and I imagine for many others, you know.
Thank you so much. Um, I'm curious, when you're doing the clearing practice with emotion code, do you notice lately, or I guess lately would be for at least maybe the last 8 months or so, do you get the sense of if it's your emotion, a trapped emotion from you, or if it's from the collective. Do you get that sense?
Yeah. Or like, so if I'm working with someone, sometimes I'll, just happened yesterday. I had like an image of like, it'll be like a split second. I'll get a quick image of like, oh, this is not this person's like emotion. This came from someone else and they picked it up.
Uh-huh.
I haven't thought about the collective. That's curious. I'm gonna think about that now
I'm
because
just,
I haven't drawn my attention to that.
yeah.
Like I know like I have it in my subconscious that like we do pick up from other people. Like I am aware of that. It never occurred to me to wonder, to hold that curiosity of like, oh, I wonder if this
Oh,
is from the collective. Now that we're talking about this, I wonder how it's going to affect now when I do clearings. Now that I'm holding that awareness of like, oh, be curious if this is from the collective.
oh,
You
I
know what I
just,
mean?
yeah, I do. And also, I don't know why. I guess I was so focused on you, and we've been connecting, and now I'm just like taking in you with this backdrop. I'm like, that is so beautiful. I just was like taking the whole thing in together.
Thanks.
And actually, that's a really nice, it's not only nice artwork behind you, but it's also exciting for me because that's more of how I see people, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more like that. And so
Yeah.
it's, if I wonder, it would be so nice if people, when they looked in the mirror, if they could see things like that around them. That's what I see with people a
Yeah.
lot.
Are you speaking about like this, how this
Yeah.
comes out? Yeah.
Yeah, because there's the aura, and then there's the different kinds of beings, and maybe there's flowers, there's nature spirits, and I think I see dolphins, and there's like the moon, yeah, above you.
Yeah, the moon above, there's hummingbirds off camera, a rainbow, there's a
Um,
volcano right below me. There's
was that painted? Did
women
you
on
paint
horses. No, I wish I painted this. No, this really beautiful
that?
artist, Isabel Galactica Mariposa.
It's
Um,
gorgeous.
I have several of her paintings. She's a really, really talented artist. Uh, she lives in Hawaii, I think on Kauai Island. Um,
Yeah, it's really so beautiful, and also
yeah,
it goes with you so well.
yeah, not intentional. There's if you could see
Yeah,
how it just happened to work out when I sat here. it just it just worked out that way.
it does work out.
Like cool.
It does work out, and it reminds me also that that's also what you've I know you've heard me talk about this before too, but for a long time, ever since I've been working with the Kontomble in this lifetime, I mean, for a long time they've been, or I guess I've been sensing this too, just like so many of us, that there was ultimately going to be some kind of great collapse that happens, and then there's going to be, a culture that rises. So I remember maybe, let's say, 10 years ago or something, when I was in a relationship with this person, I remember him talking about, um, maybe 10 or 20 years from that time, where he was talking about the reality as though everything was going to be more or less the same. And it
Mm,
confused me, like it genuinely confused me, because I was thinking, I don't know, why is he saying that? I don't understand why he's saying that. Why does he
yeah,
think that everything's going to stay that? Why would it stay the same? But I guess it just seems so sturdy to people or something. I don't know. But to me, it wasn't like a question if it was when it was. You just could
yeah,
sense it. You know what I mean? I
yeah.
think like so
I would
many of
agree.
us, we could just sense it.
Yeah,
Um, so, and as you know, because you were hearing the Kontomble during different rituals and stuff, and they were kind of like, not kind of like, they were sounding the warning. It wasn't a kind of like, it was actually, it sounded like, a siren, not like the, sensual siren or something,
right,
like
right, right.
a siren, wee, it's like that. There's
Yeah,
something happening soon.
exactly.
So, and the tone has changed so much. So it seems it could have seemed paradoxical before, because exteriorly maybe people, they're like living their dream or something, or they're having good lives or something like that, you know. I'm like, why do you want to talk about, you know, some awful things that might happen, you know? And it seems almost paradoxical now too, because now it looks like everything's crumbling every single day. You're like, oh my god, what more is this couch about to give out? Anything that you imagine is solid, like, oh god.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that. It's so interesting. Like, give up, like, going back probably, I would say like a little bit before 2012 is, and I wasn't, I mean, I was in a different chapter of my life. Like, it's almost like unrecognizable, like where I was at that time. And I remember sensing like something, well, I knew something needed to change in my life. That was the first thing. I felt like, oh, I've overstayed this chapter. Like I'm ignoring my heart. You know this, the movie that, I mean, not the movie, the book The Alchemist has always played such a, like a, it's been such an anchor point for me.
That's awesome.
And I remember, and I read it, my sister introduced me to that book when I was in high school. And I remember reading it, and it's always like, it was just like a seed, like a solid seed that was planted in my heart. It was like, listen to your heart, follow the omens. Like that has since then, like, been very instrumental in my life. And I remember feeling like, oh, I've overstayed my welcome in this chapter. Like, what's happening? I need to move. Something needs to change. And then feeling like it's very important for this change to happen now, because it's important for later, whatever later is. And it's been like picking up the pieces of different pieces of the puzzle of like, oh, this, not this, this, not this, this, not this. And then when you entered my life again in this lifetime, it was like one of those like key like things like, oh, this, oh, this, even though like at the time didn't make logical sense. Most things don't. and I was like, you know, I'm gonna follow this. Like, what do I have to lose, right? And it's been that like I find, you know, this like continuous process of like trusting spirit and trusting like my own decisions and like my own heart, even if I fail, like whatever failure looks like, even if I hit a wall or whatever it is, it's like at least I can say I chose the path that led me there instead of having that path chosen for me. Which is like, even when it's painful, it's still like, yeah, but that's on me. Like I chose this, you know?
Totally. And I think you and I talked about this once before. I learned this just in the past few years. I love that book so much, The Alchemist, and his name is, how do you say, is it Paulo?
Paulo Coelho.
Paulo. When I listened to his story, I was like, what? When he was younger in his journey, but he was like, his parents put him into like a institute. He was institutionalized and everything, and they thought it was crazy to be an artist and to be these things. And this extraordinary soul was just like, just kept living his dream. He just kept going and he kept going and he kept persevering. And sometimes I didn't understand that for so long. When I read that book, I was so impacted by that book, and so many people being so, and I think about that a lot too. It's like, and I feel people forget that part too, or we forget that part too, that that it's so, there's such deep conditioning around like we're not supposed to make mistakes, or there's not supposed to, you know, you're just supposed to like only get it right every time. That is not even, that's not even exciting, you know.
No.
It's like, it's supposed to be some kind of like, you know, an adventure. Like that takes
no one's reading that book.
You know, it's like climbing a mountain but never feeling the strength that it requires, you know, the actual, you just climb it, and then how can you even appreciate it, because you never got to like work your strength. And then of course there's like spiritual strength, and there's heart strength, like heart muscle strength. And Yeah, and then of course I was thinking about us being on the glacier too.
That was intense.
That was intense. That was intense. Totally, yeah.
To
And
draw the picture, we were in Iceland. Kontomble told us to go there. Which we really need to like talk about who the Kontomble are.
yes, please.
I'm like, oh yeah, we have to talk about them. And we're climbing. So okay, I'm gonna say. So when Liv told me we're gonna be climbing a glacier, all my knowledge of what a glacier is was a big flat piece of ice. That's all I've ever understood glaciers to be. So I figured, I'm like, oh, we probably have to climb up a slope to get to the top of the glacier. It is a big flat piece of ice.
Right.
Well, come to find out, actually, I'm wrong. This glacier, Snæfellsjökull, I think is the name of it,
Yeah.
in Western Iceland, is on top of a dormant volcano. So essentially, we are climbing a dormant volcano that is covered by a glacier. We left in Iceland during the summer solstice, which like in that area the sun doesn't really set. So it's like the midnight sun, and we climbed for, I think it was something like 8 or 9 hours.
Oh yeah, I forgot that.
Started in the evening and we ended in the morning. And it was the most challenging physical that I've ever done. And I actually trained for it too, because I was like, I need to like start like, I mean, I was an athlete for like many, many years. I'm like, I need to like make sure like I'm physically up for this. I've been, yeah. It was challenging.
And that's the thing.
Really beautiful.
Yeah, the Kontomble, they asked us, they asked us to go there and do these, and there's a whole, I mean, it would be probably, this story would probably be a couple hours or something if we gave even like the background or something about the other kind of like major spirit beings and things that were, I mean, who could make that up anyway? And that was like, that's the beauty. It's like the book, The Alchemist too, is when, and it requires bravery, it requires courage. And no, there's no guarantee. Where's the guarantee? If you had the guarantee, then is that requiring courage? That's just making a deal. If you have the guarantee, okay, I'm going to do this and then you do this for me, that's a deal. That's making a deal. That's not trust. You know what I mean? So that was, I mean, to experience that kind of magic and to understand that that was one of the elves' like holy days and everything. I mean, that was incredible on the solstice, and whoa.
And they specifically, the elves specifically asked us to show up and to climb that glacier. That was actually the reason why we went to Iceland, is because they requested that.
Exactly.
And then to have this demigod, amazing demigod, who taught us so much in so many different ways, show up and speak to the guide who was guiding us, who we didn't find out till the day of, that like, because he had told Sylvie that he knew we were coming or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And that he something to that effect. And it wasn't the day of that he told us that Bardor, which I hope I'm saying his name wrong, right? I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, is his basically spiritual guide. And Bardor told our guide that we were coming, and that this was like important.
I mean, it was amazing. That was so amazing. In fact, because we talked about this, I'll post this on my channel. I should put one of the photos from the climbing during that glacier that we were all up there. That was amazing. That was really, really amazing. And also the Kontomble that you're talking about too, that I mean, I'm sure you feel them here now. They're with us, of course. And what they're wanting me to share also, because they keep bringing my attention to that art around you. And they're showing too that this is the phase or the, what do you call that, the, like the passage. Some people will say it's like a birthing canal or something, and some people will say it's um, you know, astrological, or it's all these kind of different things that kind of micro macro energy. And so they're, and that's what they're showing, is that, you know, people will talk, say fifth dimension and things like that. If I, as I experience it, there's nothing really, it's not, you know, some kind of new age, I mean, new age, it's not like simply a way to talk, it's
Yeah.
actual energetics. It's not, you know, putting a statement on new age or anything like that. I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is that they're real energies,
Yeah.
as real as we are. And it's just in a, as I experience it, it's just, it's like a higher dimension or a higher frequency. And so as we, that's the thing I was mentioning before, the kind of like stabilizing a particular frequency, and then your eyes are able to see energies and things more easily. And
Yeah.
then there's a good chance that people would be seeing things like that, and that
Yeah.
wouldn't be so unusual. And what you were mentioning also about the ancestors and these offerings, and that it's not only, it's not, it's not only my hope that that happens. It's true, like me as Liv, in contrast to my, I guess, the spiritual side of me or something, or the Kontomble's way that they work with me. It is true that I hope to see these things or experience these things of, that it wouldn't be a kind of like fringe thing or something to be honoring one's ancestors. It's just, it just becomes remembered. And as I experience it, like the more, I mean, ever since we've known each other in this lifetime, I would say, I know we both have like a love for truth, and keep going, like, oh, we do like the deep dives and dig into things like, what did
I'm a
you find?
Scorpio. I can't help it.
You know, like, would you say Scorpio?
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
Scorpio. I can't help it.
And I told you, I think probably the Kontomble Scorpio too.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? We just go, it's like one of my favorite things to do. Like, okay, what did you find? Okay, what did you find? What do you feel about that? What do you feel about that? And I can't say that there are, well, I can't say that there are so many like new discoveries that I've experienced in the past year. More, they were, I felt, oh, okay, yeah, those things that we've talked about also for some years, like, whoa, that's so real. And a
Yeah.
lot of people know about it now.
Yeah.
And it's hard for most all people to hold. It's not
Yeah.
hard for some people to hold. I think any person that I hear talk about these particular things that, you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
it's hard for, I think, most people to hold
Yeah.
that reality.
Yeah.
But so it's more just perceiving more of like these ways that these kind of artificial, there does seem to really be something with these, like, I guess people would call it like an almost like an artificial matrix or something. This part that there are these, um, it is that I can speak about it from what I sense, and then the more I'm like, and that goes into the fourth dimension, and that's why it's helpful. You know, I've mentioned, I think to you that I've mentioned recently that I've been working with these particular prayers from Christopher Macklin, and they've been so helpful of getting, you know, manipulate who, I mean, manipulations and things, whatever is messing with this,
Yeah.
and that what gets in, whatever is manipulating, however, whoever, I don't need to know,
Yeah.
make prayer. And if I can do that prayer and I feel the
Yeah.
shift happening, I can
Yeah.
feel it, I can sense it, and I can sense
Yeah.
the electronics different.
Yeah.
So it's just a continue, like, okay, yeah, that's all a real thing. And what is that? What does that prohibit us from? What does that prohibit us from understanding spiritually?
Yeah.
How does our imagination get siphoned?
Yeah.
And so you have these like amazing dreamers that come into the earth connected to the other world, and maybe they wake up and they forget, actually wake up out of the dream space, and
Yeah.
they forget. And then maybe, you know, without maybe being out of a practice, some kind of practice, whatever practice would be fitting for them, maybe being outside of some kind of practice, their imagination or their like imaginal realm has been siphoned and goes into,
Yeah.
so how do we kind of, my practice has been like, okay, how can we like call all of our energy back? Like, all right, cool, you had your way. Didn't know it. Okay. I knew for a long time when I was growing up that TV, it was not a good idea to have a TV on in every room. Got that part. Like I figured that part out, So, but then
Yeah,
how do
totally.
we, how do we, because I really believe so many of us, maybe so many of us on Earth come from so many different like star systems, and maybe some are new souls and they came in here specifically to help, or maybe we've been here many times before and we have these ancient practices, or we remember they live inside of us, they live inside of all of us.
Yeah.
And so how do we remember, like call it back? So it's not like, okay, I'm not gonna, hate that person or that soul or that being or whatever. It's just like, just
Yeah.
call the energy back.
Yeah.
No. And so and then remembering as we work together, and then it strengthens and it strengthens. What did you think about this? I didn't get to ask you before, but I'm curious. What did you think about that the other day on that live stream, that
Oh,
whole thing that
yeah.
was happening? What did you make of that?
Well, so for those who don't know, Liv, on her YouTube channel, she did a live stream on Sunday. And as she was making offerings and prayers, or like really in the beginning, the sound started to distort. And I've like connected with you on Zoom many times. And like, granted, this was the first YouTube live,
Totally.
but like we've been on these electronics
Yeah.
for like at least the past year, 2 years, I don't even know. But we've done this,
Totally.
you know? And it was fascinating to me to see. I was like, and I was sensing the spiritual energy was very strong
Mm.
before we connected. As you were saying the prayers, like you just feel it's something that I've learned how to pay attention to.
Mm.
Um, Before I may not have had the awareness of like to make any sense of what I was experiencing. Then in the moment, I was like, okay. And then the sound just, I think someone in the chat said like intergalactic later on. And I
Oh.
was like, that's what it was. It started to distort.
Oh.
And for me, what drew my attention was when you started saying a prayer for the crystals and the electronics. So I think a lot of people, a lot of people don't realize. I mean, it wasn't until like a few years ago that I realized it's like, you know, a crystal isn't just like an inanimate object. Like there's life in here, even though for whatever reason science has decided that life is only things that can grow. Like
Mm.
that would argue that because there's life here, there's energy here. Anyone who's an energy healer knows this. They can see that there's life, there's energy, and where there's energy, there's life. And so I
Mm.
think something that we forget is that there's crystals in our electronics. That's actually a key component of what allows for the electronics to work. So you were saying a prayer for the crystals, and for me, I started seeing, because in my space, um, behind this curtain here, this tapestry, is where I sit for tea, and I have plants, and there's just like a lot of life there, and I have crystals. I have crystals everywhere in this room, and I started to notice the shift of the energy, not only of the electronics but of the crystals in the room. And I was like, I feel like my room just got really crowded. Like it was that
Oh.
feeling of like, oh, there's more people here. That you close your eyes and you feel like people enter the room, that kind of experience. And so I was like, oh, I feel it was almost like as if the crystals were hearing with a very keen, like, you know,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
oh.
yeah. Yeah.
And for me, because I've sat in ceremony, not only with you, but other
Mm.
different types of spiritual ceremonies that exist, there is a feeling that I get in my body when there's low frequency energies, like entities, when they come in the
Mm.
room. And I was tracking myself, I was like, is this that? And it
Mm.
was like, nope, like nothing. No, there was nothing in my body that was like
Mm.
my heart wasn't beating fast. I wasn't getting like that like thing that happens. So I was like, okay, so this is okay. This is cool. This is like a good thing. I'm like, it feels stressful because like my mind is stressed about this, but like this is all right. This is good. And then we jumped off and then we got back on, and then it started to distort again. But then we decided collectively to like just stay with it. And at one point when you were speaking, it really distorted. I had no idea what you said. And then you said something. I sent a message to Sylvia. I was like, I think we just have to accept this. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's actually just what we have to do. And I sent that message. You said something. And then it was like, it was like the most key sound ever. And
And
I
it
was
was,
like, wow, the sound just like got really clear.
oh yeah.
We're
This
like,
was, this
oh,
was saying something about turbulence and then coming into peace, and then it
yeah,
just, yeah.
that's exactly what it was. And I was like, whoa, that was kind of like a lived experience about what they were just talking through you. Of like, there's turbulence.
Mm-hmm.
And like, the thing that they said that I've been like, it's been my mantra since then is like, be neutral. When there's turbulence, be neutral,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And that's something I'm like, be neutral, Natalie. Be neutral. You're getting reactive. Be neutral. Be neutral. And I think that's actually a really good teaching for when there's chaos, you know,
Yeah,
finding that no matter.
I keep pausing because there's something they're showing me right now. I think it's what they're wanting me to share. Do you want me to tell you what they're showing me?
Of course.
Um, the Kontomble, they always just, anyway. Um, let's see. They're basically showing. I wasn't really rolling my eyes at the Kontomble, but I was like laughing because they're just, anyway, they have such a funny way of like jumping around. um, they're 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 really wanting to make sure that I'm emphasizing. They're really wanting to make sure that I'm not just kind of speaking about the next place, the place where this is all meant to go to, the passage that we're moving through in that space, or that different dimension, you could say, that humans are moving into, that is closer to spirit. So they want to make sure that I'm not speaking about it too um like tangentially or something, but that I'm giving it its like due respect. And they're basically showing that it's where humans and spirit reunite again, where like right now basically what they're showing is that, you know, the difference between humans and the spirit realm is it's the density of humans. And especially because so much of the thinking is dense, it's dense thinking, and there's density that's there from, as we were talking about before too, like accumulated layers of emotion and that create like layers of density which keep us from sensing into the supernatural. And so this like this passage, and that there are these they're saying like archaic, there are these archaic and also decrepit forces that are projecting themselves as strong, and even they use the word like virile or something like that, but they're actually archaic and they're decrepit. And so it's through this like matrix technological, like artificial um, uh, like program that's generated, especially through the television. um, it has people continuously like looping back into believing that's real. They continue to get caught up in the loop, and it starts looping. It gets in a looping so-called reality, but it's like a looping program. But what they show is if people can get themselves in a lighter state somehow. Even sometimes you get there through like levity or something, and then you get, that's what it's meant to, not just be a place that you're just touching and able to touch and feel and sense, but that there's actual, that there, it moves into that place, that is the, you arrive into that energy where um humans and this humans and spirit reunite, and so they show that reality together. And that's what the spirits have shown me before, and the Kontomble have shown me before, is that that's the way it used to be on Earth. It
Yeah.
used to be like that. It used, and it is like that still in other places on Earth still, thankfully.
Yeah.
The spiritual dimensions, they didn't need to go away. They were closer together. And people might wonder, well, how are they closer together? They're closer together because they know that that's real, and they respect that.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
spiritual dimensions, these beings, they appreciate being respected just as we do. Um, so, but that's what they're showing. They're showing, and so it's like it's a well reality.
Mm-hmm.
It's a well reality. They said that 3 times, like the Kontomble do. They say it in 3. It's a well reality also, that they show their well, like water. It's well, has water flowing through. Not any being is left out in the, like the dried out, like scarce
Mm-hmm.
energy. The energy that this program that loops is like, it's almost like its primary function is to spit souls out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sucks them up and spits them out. And so it's a return, it's a return into this being reunited with the spiritual dimensions, and they help us get well again. They remind us how to get well, and then from there, well, you make beauty, you create beauty, you sing, you create. You remember the blessing of creation, that we have the ability to create. That is our being birthed from, like, the creator, the creatress. Like, we have these hands, we have this creative imagination, we can create, and that is our, it's like a divine ability,
Yeah.
when we honor it like that.
Yeah. It's interesting, as you were speaking. I don't know if I ever told you about this. The book, The Fifth Sacred Thing.
Uh-huh.
Have
Oh,
we
well, I
talked
don't
about
know
it?
if you told me about it. I read it a while ago.
Whenever I picture that, like that reality that Starhawk talks about, like the community, about probably is probably the best way to say it, that they created and how it works in harmony. When I feel into that, because I know Kontomble have talked about how times used to be in the beginning when
Oh,
Gaia like was first created, and how all was welcome,
mm,
um, and how we're returning back to that. When I read that book, I remember thinking like, oh, this feels like what Kontomble have talked about, as
yeah,
far
yeah.
as like everyone being in harmony, everyone's taking care of each other, everyone is essential to the whole and knows it,
Mm,
and everyone's able to like access like what brings them joy, like that's what they get to contribute to the
mm,
community, is the things that like make them come alive.
mm.
Whether it's like a person who's very scientific and wants to like work in the, in the scientific group and do
Yeah,
like
for sure.
technology, or someone who likes to be a healer, someone who likes to garden, or someone who
Yeah,
likes to take care of waste management. Like it was just all of it, the way
yeah.
that they all like, work together. And I've like very strongly believe that's something that we can actually create. It's not some
Totally.
like far-fetched thing.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, what if that, that it's when maybe if you're a parent, you're an aunt, or you're an uncle, or whatever exactly, to a child, and rather than, kind of molding them to be like a younger you or something, that were like, that you ask them to like follow, go into what they love. Or if we do that. I know we do that with each other, but with people, like what if we start relating like that? And as you're mentioning, it's like it's something it is totally possible.
Yeah.
And how do we welcome that into this dimension? Well, we welcome it into this dimension, and then we start taking those like real actions and things that you notice when you see somebody talking about something and you watch their whole energy field light up and ignite, and then you're like, oh, I see that you love that, or that brings joy to you. And then maybe it's they love gardening and you give them seeds, and they're seeds that have sat on your altar and everything. And then it's just, honoring and seeing the very unique sacred fire that exists in each soul. And then like, oh, how can we like make offerings into that fire, so that we can be with each other like that. And I believe that we do be with each other like that, and we build
Yeah.
community, work in community with others who be like that. And that's the thing also, I imagine you've heard the Kontomble say so many times before too. And I remember one of the first, this would be last year, or this was last year, when it was first, when everything was happening. Maybe I guess that was in March, maybe April. And when I was still on Instagram, and the Kontomble were talking, and they'll say this so many times. It's just, well, one, they tried to ignite people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
Are you a mouse, or are you a lion?
Yeah.
Like, remember who you are.
Yeah.
And this is what I hear from so many of the spirits too. Like, they 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 don't do it for us.
Yeah.
If they did it for us, how would we grow?
Yeah.
But there's a meeting that happens, and
Yeah.
when you ignite, you do part of it, you like stretch, like the thing
Yeah.
that we're talking about too, going into that, the alchemist, like following the omen. And you see that this omen or this message is guiding you, like, oh, I don't know what's inside that cave. I don't know. Feels a little scary. Could be danger in there.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
but you also have the feeling, it's just, you just got to go there.
Yeah.
And then, amazingly enough, when you go there, well, yeah, maybe you did encounter the danger, and then you're like, okay, you got the jewel really fast. You got the jewel. You got it.
Uh-huh.
Like reach inside of like a shark's mouth or something. You get the thing that there are these tests that have happened always. Sometimes they're called initiations, and these are spiritual tests that happen.
Yeah.
And how do you know if you've successfully made it through the test or something? I mean, it's not to say it's not going to be hard. Yeah, it likely will be very difficult. But how do
Mm-hmm.
you know? Well,
Mm-hmm.
your energy changes
Yeah.
permanently
Yeah.
in a particular place. I mean, I imagine you probably experienced that so many times.
I have.
Strong wind horse.
Literally, as you're talking, like having like there's like a movie screen happening. I'm like, yep, that's when that happened, and that's when that happened.
As you remember,
Never easy.
as you remember, we were in Mongolia, and then they were telling me about strong wind horse. I said, the strong wind horse this one has.
I remember when we had, I think it was, we had just come back from one of many really intense experiences while we were there, and you looked over at me and you were like, Kontomble said that we successfully went through the initiation, and I literally fell to my knees on the ground like, thank God.
Yeah.
And you laughed just like that.
Mercy.
But it's funny because I also, as you were speaking, I was remembering that lately I've been having these like, I mean, my dreams are always really active, this. And I would say like maybe in the past week at least, I've had what I'm now realizing were like parallel life timelines.
Oh, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I was having these dreams of like, if I didn't decide to listen to this omen, what life would have looked like if I stayed where I was at.
Mm.
And it's really interesting because in the dream, I'm the dreamer, but I'm also like I'm also playing me in the experience, knowing that this is not who I am, and seeing like, but what the reality that I was living in if I chose not to take a chance on spirit, basically. And it was like, I woke up like, really, there was like a lot of anxiety in my body. I'm like, oh my God, okay, that's not my life. Like, okay, I can breathe. But it's really interesting because it now as we're speaking, I'm like, oh, that's what that was. And I know I've gone into that. I've ha- I've had that dream 3 different times of that, what would have happened to me as Natalie in this life if I chose not to take that big chance
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
decide
yeah.
to go back to school, to go to California, to experience all the things that has happened because I chose to go there, even though like everything else was like, you sure you want to do that? Like you're kind of stable here. Like things are kind of like good for you right here. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like this is not where my life is supposed to go. And it's interesting because I realize as you're speaking about initiations, like how much I have changed, just me, since, was that 6 years ago? Yeah, 6 years ago. And what feels like 40 years in those 6 years, you know? So
Yeah, yeah.
continuously trusting in that unknown.
I know you step into it so beautifully. I know I've seen it's been, can you imagine how many years? It's crazy. It feels like in this lifetime maybe we've been reconnected for 10 years or something, but has it really
Easily.
just been like 4 or something?
5.
5?
5.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting too because we've been in these really like these deep ritual spaces together, and it's so interesting like what happens with time when you go into
Totally.
those. It's so
Yeah.
right because
It
you come
absolutely
out
is.
and it'll be maybe a week or something, you're like, that was a year, right?
Yeah.
It does the most interesting thing with time. And yeah, yeah,
Which
yeah,
that has those experiences have made me really curious about this ideology that as a collective we all have, that time is, um what is that word? There's a word for that. Yeah, I
yeah.
can't think of the word, but that time is something that's like happens like this to that. When
Right.
when I the more experiences I've had in ceremonies, and really, and not even just ceremonies, but also just like
Yeah,
going into that flow state and not subconsciously agreeing to the limits of time as chronological like chronos. It's really fascinating to me because there's a different way of relating, that feels very like in tune with nature, and you know and it's limitless. And it
yeah,
makes me think, like before you were talking about, um how the TV, how we like allow for ourselves to be hypnotized by the
yeah,
programming that comes through those waves. Now also we have like technology, cell phones and social media, that's like it's those programming has they've like morphed into different ways to be able to hypnotize our us to
yeah,
be less connected with nature, and then in those flow states,
yeah,
how all those things box us in,
yeah,
and how, because we're subconsciously agreeing to that, what we're also subconsciously agreeing to is being tethered to one particular way of existence, when
yeah.
in reality, like it, I've been listening to this podcast that a friend told me about, that, it's the Yoga Book Club, I think is the name of it. And this woman is, I think I'm on episode 4, and she's talking about the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita, I've been like really wanting to understand and know, because I wasn't, even though my father's from India, he was raised Catholic. And so I wasn't raised in the like indigenous religion and ways of being
Yeah.
from that lineage. And so because of that, like I'm curious because there's a lot there. Um, and I've learned about the cities. I think that's how you say it.
The
There's
city.
these gifts that we have,
Yeah.
and I it's like even recently for some reason I look at an object and I expect it to float over to me. Because
Oh,
there's something happening for me where I'm like remembering, and I'm pretty sure that's a city, like telekinesis.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure is one of the
Yeah.
gifts. And
Yeah.
it's funny, I'll catch myself thinking that, like watching myself being like, oh, this should just come to me. Like we have a relationship, me and this, like my water bottle actually before it happened. I like looked at my water bottle, I was like, come here. And I wait, why am I thinking that the water bottle is gonna come here?
Oh,
Like, oh, something unlocking in
yeah.
the subconscious. And it makes me think of like how um like for example, how Disney has made us relegate the little people to being from the land of make believe.
Yeah.
It's one of the many programmings that have existed and have limit us as humans from
Yeah.
expanding our reality. It makes me curious of like, well, other things, why am I for the past, I could say easily for the past month, I've had this constantly catching myself of looking at a thing, something else that's not my physical body, and expecting telekinesis to work.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I'm curious of like in the Bhagavad Gita, I mean, not even just the Bhagavad Gita, but in the yogic branches, like what are the siddhis that are inherent to my ancestral lineage, to my soul lineage, like to who I am, that I am unconsciously agreeing because I've unconsciously agreed to these programs that they're blocking me from being able to access that. Because so far of what I've experienced in life in these past 6 years, just that alone, and
Mm-hmm.
that there has been so many things that have been remembered because I've trusted that what I've been told all of my life, there's a possibility that that's not correct.
Mm-hmm.
And because spirit was like nudging me, like really nudging in like a really irritating way that I felt like I had no other choice but to say yes, even though, most people will be like, no, 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 like I'm not gonna do this. It just I find myself being curious.
Yeah.
What else is there?
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, I'm super inspired hearing that you're having these experiences, um and so like as you were mentioning that you're as I experience what you're communicating, let's say that you're in your natural relaxed state, and then you're seeing a water ball or something. And when you're just in your natural, relaxed spiritual zone, then maybe you're just, yeah, expecting or imagining it could just come to you, which it
Mm-hmm.
can, of course. And and then there's the part that's like, wait a minute. So let's
Mm-hmm.
say those are different parts, and is the one the natural you, and is the other, the modern you or something, let's say,
Yeah,
something like that, right?
yeah,
And then, like what you're mentioning too, with the little people being relegated or cast into the land of the make believe by Walt Disney or whatever, and that whole cast of characters that people are finding out about that are really, really, really not for the well being of children, let's just say that.
mm-hmm.
Or, you know,
Like,
the more I understand, or the more the more I, in my own personal experience, the more I understand more of this whole story, or just kind of the overarching, or the way that the Kontomble teach me or show me through the arc of time, then I think, of course, yeah, of course they would go after the enchanted ones. Of course they would go after the bridge people. Of course they would have it built in to the whole system,
yeah,
all the branches of the education system, also
yeah,
could be said indoctrination system,
yeah,
starting from Walt Disney
yeah,
and onwards. where the child is just in a straight trance mode and just taking it all in, including the subliminal suggestions.
Yeah.
You know. And the more I think about it, you know, it's just a pyramid. You know, like and to just to kind of like, because the Kontomble, they've had this whole like trajectory study, you know, to not go too much in the deep, but understand the basic, the arc of time, what happened. Of course, they would not want the enchanted ones, the ones that are bridge people, the children that are like, nope, you don't paint with your left hand, with your right hand. We only use the right hand, you know. And like, of course, because then you can just see through, or the spirits, they just tell you, just as the Kontomble have been telling us for this time. If the Kontomble trust people, and that's what you've experienced before too, they will see what a soul is ready for. That soul may not believe that they're able to see. And
totally.
You know, I'll like leave it at that. But as far as I experience them, they see what a soul is ready for. And it may be something that feels like very affronting to the egoic part of ourselves or whatever. You know, they've done it with me so many times through the years. It's not separate from it, you know, like all of a sudden you find yourself, you get tripped or something, you know, it's like they like us, you know, staying connected with our inner spirit, you know, our true soul being. And also to understand that these multidimensional beings, they understand a thing or two about the human experience. They've been with humans since the beginning. And then here's the thing I heard recently. I was like, what? Okay. I heard about, I know we're going to stop soon, but I'll just say this because it's connecting these different dots. I heard this person talking on a show. This is one like Truth or whatever that I've listened to recently. And they're talking about this whole like God, you could say God, goddess, source, consciousness, whatever, like God courts or something. So they said that, so remember you were talking about the way these, like this programming happens and stuff. And then also what I learned over listening to different people is that when you're watching a television show or TV or movie or something, your brain waves go into this state where again it's just going in, which is why it can also be such effective programming too for those that are actually, that's their intention with a movie, let's say, or whatever, you know, that they've, or cartoons or something, you know, because it goes into this particular brainwave state, which is, I think it's also like the trance state, if I remember.
I find myself being, I wonder if it's like a theta state.
I think, I wonder if it's a theta state. And so, so this person that I was listening to recently, he was saying that, let's say this group, I'm not going to say the name of this group, but a lot of people are paying attention to this group that is global. I'll say that, you know, you catch my drift. And he was saying that they actually would do petitions to like the God court or something. So they would say, this is what he said. It's just interesting to chew on. What he said was that they would say, no, we showed them what we were going to do. We showed them, this is the movie. Here's the movie. We showed them. They agreed to it. Maybe there was somewhere in the movie that it says, and this is actually true or something. I was like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Is this really?
I've heard this before. Like the universal law, you have to reveal what it is that you're doing. You can't do something without. Which when I heard that, I was like, and I've always, I mean, you know this, I always like, you know, Natalie, what's your discernment? Like check in with yourself. I'm not gonna take anyone, you know, maybe when I was more naive and I was younger, I definitely would take things at like face value, like, oh, this is truth. And life has taught me that like, why are you giving your sovereignty away? Why are you allowing someone else to like dictate what truth is for you? So now I very steadily ask myself always, does this feel like a truth for me? Even if everyone else is like, this is truth. And I'm like, nope. I was like, that's truth for y'all, but it's not truth for me. And I'm allowed to be different. And
Yeah,
um, so I would ask myself when I heard that, I was like, does this feel like a truth for me?
right.
Does it feel in uh, alignment with life and the universe, like universal law, that to be able to do something to everyone, if we all are sovereign beings,
Yeah,
I believe that to be very true. Yes,
yeah,
we are all connected to one another.
yeah,
It's the paradox of life. You are one and you are also sovereign.
yeah.
And so, if as sovereign beings, like, then I have to have some kind of agreement, whether it's in my awareness or not,
Mm,
saying that, yes, you can do this to me
mm,
because I'm sovereign. That's inherent to who I
mm,
am in this avatar, as
mm,
this soul frequency,
mm,
as this one piece of the many. I
mm,
have sovereignty. And
mm,
so, as a law of sovereignty, I have to agree for
mm.
anything to happen to me. And it's
Yeah,
funny because I've noticed, like, I mean, have grown up. I mean, when I was a kid, like, my mom, thank goddess, like, did not let me have a lot of screen time. Like, I didn't have video games.
nice.
I had like a very strict, like, this is after school, you can watch TV from like this time to this time. I can't remember, like, I remember like educational, like PBS was we had like basic cable. So like PBS was like my like TV. I didn't have Disney or anything like that growing up. I watched the Disney movies, but we didn't have Disney Channel. And I was outside. I spent like most of my life as a child outside. I have all the scars to prove it. And so when I was like a teenager and like college, obviously, I would obviously watch more TV. And like, I loved movies. I've always loved movies. And it's funny because most recently, my sister and I sat to like watch a movie on Netflix. And we were maybe 5 minutes in, and we both looked at each other. I'm like, I can't do this. It was like there was too much violence in the movie. And it
Oh,
would have been a movie like maybe 5 years ago. I could have easily watched it and been like,
was
cool,
it?
like fine. I don't remember the movie, but it
Huh.
was on Netflix. It was
When
like
was it?
this is like maybe last year at some point,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
maybe like summer around that, let's just say. And I was like, oh, I can't really watch it. I was like,
Mhm.
it was just like too much. And I noticed like now I have more awareness of like, I'm because I have that awareness that now there are messages in these art forms, let's just say that,
Yeah,
are put there that are either giving you clues of what's happening or like you're agreeing to this reality. So I
yeah,
find myself being curious. Now I come with like the eye of like, oh, let me study what it is that is being pumped into the collective so I can understand and study what is happening, but
yeah.
also being aware that I'm not agreeing to this as reality.
Mhm.
It's like that holding both of that. Whereas like maybe 2 years ago, not even like five, like 2 years ago, I didn't have any of that like clear curiosity of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I was I mean, I've like talked to you about this before too. Like before I used to just sometimes I would like to just watch some different kinds of shows or whatever, that just kind of
Yeah.
like brings you into like the lightness or whatever, that
Yeah.
is just like, oh, whatever. It's just kind of like light entertainment or something.
Mhm.
And probably for the last 9 months or something, even when I even start to, I'm like, oh, there's something that feels, I don't know if it's just like the energies that change or you just kind of like understand a little too much about maybe
Yeah.
who the cast of characters are or something,
Yeah.
or like, oh, I don't agree to that. I don't. And if my consciousness is gonna take any part in the recreation of that dramatization or the drama, I'm like, I don't want to imagine that. I don't want to imagine
Yeah.
that. And that I'm just being more like careful with where the imaginary energy
Yeah.
is going or something, or because we've talked about this before too, but it's like this is the Kontomble have had me studying this in the past year, and that I guess it is sometimes it's called like plasma or something like that, or this like luminous fibers, that it is actual. It would be so cool if this was just remembered from birth and we can just kind of get that back into the understanding, you know, so then children are like consciously, may it be so, but this is the way I do experiences like these, you know, and then when you're working with that, and then I believe what quantum physics says also is it's the language is something where it goes, if maybe correct me if I get this off, but I believe it's like where the particle goes into the wave. My understanding is the wave is more of the creation part. The particle is where it's already determined what that is, where the observer is seeing whatever it is, like the atom or whatever, and that having an idea or belief about what it is, it makes it fixed. But if you're right,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so if you're like, if you're going in, my understanding, again, correct me if I'm off about this, this is the way I understand it so far. If you're, I work with sensing a lot, it's like sensing and feeling. And so it's like feeling into the wave where it's not already, it's this, you kind of like feel into it and it lets it go into that, like the creation aspect of the energy. Whereas if people are like, no, this is what it is, no, this is what it is, no, this is what it is, and it keeps those fixed atoms in a particular design, which is also the plasma, which is that the golden luminous fibers. And so they keep, like, if that's a face or something or a belief, a set of beliefs, then they keep making it fixed. Is that the way you understand it?
Yeah, and that goes back to what I was talking before about the cities
That's
and
what I
how
was thinking.
I was like, because I even found myself, because I mean, you know this about me, that like energy has played a role in my life since I can say for sure, when I was 12 years old, that's when I was reintroduced to energy healing. My best friend's mom was a master Reiki healer,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, there was just so many healers that kept coming into my life. It's not like I was looking for them; they kind of disappeared. I don't
Oh
know
yeah.
what I set up in, like before coming into this life. Like 12 years old was like the age that like I would need all these people to come through, and they did in a really awesome way. And I didn't at the time understand it um, in the way that I do now, but I like now I'm looking back, I'm like, wow, that was like precise. And
Mm-hmm.
and you know, yeah, I just like that's just I can go on for a lot about all of that. So I'm gonna go quickly to this part about energy and sensing energy. And you know, many people like I was one of those kids that I would get told like, oh, you're too sensitive. And there's something about that I now realize that that phrase of telling a child that they're too sensitive is is really a disservice, because you're basically telling that child to cut off a very vital gift that they have of being able to sense,
Oh yeah.
um, and also making them feel shame, which shame is just like it's just like it's like you're making them cut it off, and then you're making them put like a whole weight on top of it. And so it's just like, you know, and as an adult I've reclaimed that I am too sensitive, but realizing actually what it is that I have awareness of energy.
Oh
And
yeah.
so when I find myself, like I'll be sitting for tea and I'll like, it's oftentimes my water bottle lately now that I think about it. I'll look at my water bottle
The water
and I'll
bottle.
be like, yeah. And I found myself being curious of like, there's energy in this space between me and this bottle. All
Mm-hmm.
I have to remember is to access that. Like the flow state that, you know, when you're creating something, like I just have to remember how to get there. I was playing around with the crystal. I was like, if I can just remember how it is that my physical, because first I literally had my hand like this, and I was like, oh, that kind of feels aggressive. And I had my hand like this because it was a water bottle. I'm like, nah, that still feels aggressive. It feels like I'm demanding this thing to come to
Oh,
me. Then I had my hand like this as a what if this is like, will you come to me? And I
uh-huh.
was like, okay, this feels, and I could feel the energy like coming off of my hand. You know, when you can like sense energy. I'm like, this feels very strong. It felt demanding. This felt like, if you would please, if you would like to join me here. And so I just like sat there for a while doing this. And then I got too much into my head about it. So I was like, okay, try another day. It's getting too like logic brain. But what you were speaking to about if you observe the atom and then the atom becomes fixed, what it was reminding me of is something that I learned from this really amazing person named Eduardo Duran. He wrote Healing the Soul Wound, and he did a workshop at the school I was going to, and I took that as part of my program, and it was called Healing the Soul Wound. And I remember him talking about indigenous languages and how there's no nouns. And so like, and that really like, that was profound for me, because he was saying even in our language, when you think of the English language, there's so many nouns. And what that does is like, this is a glass cup. And so I've created the words that make this a fixed state. Whereas in the way he was explaining it, like instead of saying like I'm a woman, it would, the way that the indigenous languages would sound like is womaning is happening. So when there's, you go from a fixed state to like a flow state. And he was talking about this in the perspective of healing. Like he doesn't call his clients like, you're an alcoholic. He doesn't say that. He'll say the spirit of alcohol is visiting you. How about we get in right relationship with that spirit? What is that spirit of alcohol trying to teach you? And so it switches that, like, instead of you being a thing, you being curious about a thing and trying to work with it, realigning yourself. And so yeah, those are the things that,
like different states of being or different experiences moving through, or different states of being, and like imagining ourselves as experiencers experiencingers, and the experience happening or something. It's like happening, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to hear about that, and it is a profound shift, because it feels like it does do that. It goes from, like you were saying, the fixed state, and then we go into the wavy state of potential. As you were speaking also about this, to me it feels like ancestral cities remembering you, or something like that. What you were mentioning with these different experiences that you're having. To me it feels like remembering, and it's interesting because I feel as we sometimes come together in community also, and this is really, if I have a hidden agenda, that's my hidden agenda. I'm like, I don't usually talk about this. My hidden agenda. My secret agenda. It feels okay to talk about it now, since it's just not. You know me, that I am like the Kontomble, the way they've changed my being. I am so determined, and they have been so determined to remember particular things in village. And I was mentioning you and I, and also Tina and her partner will be having a conversation soon, and it's getting into that unconscious, subconscious part of and it was partly also to remember some of these, things, so that we can, because that's my sense also, is that well, if we've experienced that before too, then yeah, as we're continuing to go through our process of healing and alchemy and transmutation and everything else, then also the gifts from the previous incarnations and everything let's say if we have a bouquet of flowers or we have a flower garden, then those, let's say, are dormant seeds, and as we heal those particular parts, let's say of like hidden aspects of the psyche or something, then it alchemizes and it becomes water for those dormant seeds, and they can start to, as I, in some of these lifetimes that we're being healed, it's like kind of coming into right relationship in these particular ways so that the dormant seeds can and then start to grow. And as we, in a sense, it's like holding space in community, that it's like, I'm not going to say it's real. Maybe I don't want to say it's not real. I'm just holding space for it to be possible. Why just put the little fixed thing where it doesn't need to be? What are we preventing?
Yeah.
And what are we holding into place? What struggle are we continuously affirming and reaffirming by the waves, the emotional waves that we might get caught up in?
Yeah.
What are we affirming? We're reaffirming that it's like, are we remembering growth together? Or are we just remembering, are we recreating the ancestral struggle?
Yeah.
Is it necessary for us to continue to recreate,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pass the mic to you.
It's interesting because something that like there's just like that kept popping in my head is one of the things that I know that I'm here for is to help restore harmony on Gaia, because I do actually remember what it used to be like, and it was awesome.
Right.
And I have a lot of grief that it isn't like that right now, but I have a ton more hope that we can bring it back to how it was always meant to be. And what that I feel what that looks like is all of us, I mean, simultaneously having to both remember and take responsibility. And, I'm kind of reflecting on this conversation and find myself like, oh, it's curious that I keep talking about the cities, and I'm wondering, I'm not wondering, but well, yeah, I am wondering. Like, that's like, where did that come from? Why was that such a thing that kept popping in my head? And that feels like part of the both remembering and taking responsibility. Like in the first episode, when I was talking to my friend Claudia, she was talking, she's from Peru, and she descends from the Aymara people, and from the Andes, and the cosmology in the Andes, the humans are the atoms of the earth. And so whenever we take responsibility for our own healing, that ripples not only to the collective, not only to our ancestral lineages, but to all life on earth, because we are an essential part of it. And so, for me, it feels obvious that, like, of course, we all have to decide to take responsibility for our own healing. Even if it's difficult, you can view it as an offering to life. Sometimes I've had difficult moments where, like, healing sucks. Like, goodness, Liv, like, the Kontomble medicine is not for the faint-hearted. I would, not that medicine's alike, because it's not, but I would put, for me, in my experience, like my limited experiences so far in this lifetime, Kontomble medicine and like sacred plant medicines, those are not for the faint of heart.
No.
like get ready for some change.
Yeah.
And get ready to be confronted.
Yeah.
And I guess like thankfully I've decided in this life to not have such a big ego that like that clings on so strongly, because I feel like if I think about just in the past 6 years of things that I've experienced, I would have a hell of a hard time if I did.
Mm.
Um, like it feels funny saying this because it's counter who I am, but like thank God I'm humble. Because like
Yeah.
we wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah.
And um and I yeah, there's so much I can go there, but to go back to like that, to that willingness, there's been times when it's been very difficult to confront
Mm.
parts of myself,
Mm-hmm.
um but because I feel so strongly about restoring harmony, and
Mm-hmm.
that I like I can't waste this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that has helped in those times of like, okay, this really sucks. This like so much more words I could say about it. And also like I'm still alive. So
Mm-hmm.
there must be something to this, you know? And I feel, yeah. I imagine I'm not the only person feeling or having had those experiences. Um, and whether or not they have worked with you and Kontomble or any other, what do I call them? This they disassemble the
Yeah.
ego. So
Yeah.
disassemblers of the ego.
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
the the pill that shoots you out of the matrix, like anything that does that.
Yeah. I always, I don't know why I always would experience it as like an unraveling or something that would happen.
Yeah,
And I mean, I've told you this before too. I mean, I would experience it in Burkina. It's like, no, they're not. I mean, they're not. They're they're interested. They're here to help us evolve. They're not
yeah,
there's different beings. They work medicines in different ways, and just like we all have different medicines in our own like natural organic energy also. And I've talked to you about this through the years too. And honestly, a lot of times I've felt more comfortable welcoming them in more indigenous settings too, with
yeah,
indigenous where like people that are like closer to ceremony or they were raised with it and everything. I've
yeah,
just had, it's just been so much more um there's not, it doesn't feel so like jangly or something
yeah.
like that, that
Not as
there's
confronting.
what's that.
It feels like it's not as confronting.
Yeah, it's just there's different yeah, different people, yeah, that I've sat with from different cultures or that have sat with us. I mean, when we were in Mongolia, some of the shamans would sit with us too. And um they get like there's not a whole thing that has to happen, or they're just, and a lot
Yeah,
of people who are raised with ritual or raised with ceremony, they understand that you, like when I imagine when I go into the like the one of the Kontomble diviners in Burkina that I worked with, you bow, you have to actually duck your head down in going into the space, and that's also what you need to do to enter the space, that it's
yeah,
like you bow your head, and it's
yeah,
not, you know it's just been, it's yeah, like I said, I've talked to you about that through the years. It's just like we've done our best with kind of like trying to prepare people and like asking, letting them know the Kontomble can be very challenging, and kind of saying all the things and doing the application and everything, and yet still
yeah,
um and so at this point, I've mentioned also too, I mean, really with the Kontomble, as far as I know, I mean, I think, I don't know, the Kontomble, they're their own being, so they're going to come through whenever they want to come through. But as far as I know right now, I feel that probably the ceremonies for 2021 will likely be private ceremonies, and you know, with nature and everything, because honestly it's just, it's to be perfectly honest, it's just not work I'm willing to take on anymore.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
Ah,
it's like, to people, just, I'm just going to be honest with you, and you know this already, like people don't understand. I work with like a village of Kontomble, like I am, I work for the other world. I feel that's my role.
yeah.
You know, they employ me if they want to employ me, or
You're
but
contracted by them.
I'm pretty much like, I work for the other world. If they want me working with humans, if they want me working with nature, whatever, that's who I work for. Sometimes it sounds nice and people will say, "Oh, I'm in service to humanity." Like, I
Right.
don't say that. I love humans, and I don't say I'm in service to humanity. I work for the other world. To me, that feels more honest.
Yeah.
I love humans.
Yeah.
I work for the other world.
Yeah.
So um it was, it was like, that's been part of the, like, the difficulty too, is like, it's just, people probably feel this in their own, uh I imagine people feel this in all different kinds of, maybe musicians feel this in different ways, or when people don't, you know, they don't under, it's just a particular kind of way of showing up.
Yeah.
Um and when we do like everything possibly that we know how to do,
Yeah.
filling out, you know, they've got to apply, there's like a whole thing, and you prepare as much as you possibly can. People don't have awareness about entities or demons or things like that, and like just trying to help in all the ways.
Yeah.
And um I had a friend. I feel like we're going into like raw talk or something. Like, I don't know. I know we're about to end, but for whatever reason, this is being said. But I had a friend one time. He told me that he was being respectful with my work with the Kontomble, and he was telling me it's just, it's only for the initiated. You know, he felt that it should only be like initiated people that I work, or that work with me or something.
Yeah.
I felt like I understood and I respected where he was coming from. And it was so much the work before leading up to 2020 was, I just didn't understand how much the Kontomble were trying to help prepare people,
Yeah.
both giving warnings, quite honestly, and
Yeah.
also in helping them to remember their connections with a spiritual dimension. So it's both, you know,
Yeah.
and so many other things that I don't remember really.
Growing and yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know so much more than I do, because I was in a trance state during those transmissions. But yeah, it's just, as the, like, as the seasons turned, and I realized I'm just not willing to do it anymore. I'm not willing to. Um, I've like tried to prepare in certain kinds of ways. Some people will understand, some people will not understand, and um, it's just what I feel right now. And they're with me, and you know that. I mean, you can
Yeah.
feel them right now, I'm sure.
It's not like they're like separate. Like I'm always curious of like what other people think when they are with you or
Yeah,
like, connecting you in any way. Like I wonder if they think that the Kontomble, who, for those who don't know, they are star beings. They are one of the many, 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 many nations of little people that exist that have taught, you know, many of our indigenous um, ancestors, all of our indigenous ancestors, like the way of ceremony and music and art and life and ritual and all the things, no matter how disconnected we are to our indigenous ancestors, we all have indigenous ancestors. There are nations of little people who have always worked with them, and some uh, descendants from those ancient ancestors remember that connection, and some don't.
yeah.
Uh, and and so I've always wondered, um, and I feel like this could be a whole. We could do like a whole other conversation about this.
I know. I feel like,
This I keep like being like, oh, there's like a river that wants to come through. I'm like, Nope, sorry, don't have time today.
It's part two.
Part two. But how I experience you, the
Mm,
way that I've been able to have contact with you,
mm,
um, it's you, and the village is very present for me.
yeah, for sure.
Even and there's times that
Yeah,
the circus that's with me is very present.
totally.
Sometimes the circus with me is talking with the village with you,
Totally.
and countless times you and I have like sat and ate food, and then like a
Yeah.
contempt pops in. we're like, okay, and there just is. I wonder if people who don't understand that, because there's something about, I mean, you know this, uh when we first met in this life and our eyes connected, I know for me and my experience was like, oh, I remember you.
Same.
And
Yeah.
it was not like, oh, I remember you from this life or I've met you before, but like, no, I know you.
Yeah.
And it was
Exactly.
like, even though my logical brain was like, what? But like my heart was like, you know this one. It's,
Totally.
you know this for a long time. And so I think because of that knowing, and because I choose to trust that knowing, and I know you choose to trust that knowing, it's easy for us to relate and allow for um, all of who are with us to be able to be like, what up, homie? Yeah.
Totally. Totally.
You know?
Totally, and that's the thing. Yeah, you feel that. I mean, they're here, and then of course or not of course, but I experience, yeah, we're familiar with the beings that are with each other, and they like, they're in dialogue, and there's um, and yeah, it's just it's been, like I said too. I mean, we some of these places that we've been to, different villages, let's say, in different parts of the earth. I mean, they've remembered both of us in different ways, and I've thankfully, like, had those moments where it's just where I feel like I'm actually being experienced in a more accurate way or something, and it's like a moment of just being, just there is something very um like healing about being deeply understood. And
Totally.
for some particular, like, bridge people who are doing that, and they've been doing that for years, they just understand in a way where you just feel like you can, like, exhale a little bit, because people actually understand what moves through you. And the a particular kind of like strength and resiliency or something that's needed for that. And that's what I just realized with some experiences that I've had, that in, kind of like reflecting and kind of being in dialogue with the Kontomble and stuff, and just realizing, like, it will be with people that I've worked with for longer, and that, that I know understand in certain ways, that I don't feel like when I go into that space that there's um, extra tending that's
Yeah.
needed, other than, because there ultimately it's like, um, because there's places where also the Kontomble are wanting to go with this, that it
Yeah.
requires a particular kind of understanding
Yeah.
present,
Yeah.
so that we can just kind of go into that, and
Yeah.
where there's not like the extra kind of
Yeah.
thing, that it's not to make any of those things wrong, it's
Yeah.
just, it's part of the process for
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
in remembering that, yes, they're real, yes, they're multidimensional, yes, that means they understand vastly so much more. And like I said, with you, you've been in these spaces, you understand they will only ever share with any person, any group, how much they see. I've seen this with them so many times,
Yeah.
and I always get excited when I hear that. I'm like, oh cool, we're going deeper. And now I guess ultimately what it comes down to is, like, they're ready to kind of like really with the
Yeah.
earth in these particular kinds of deeper spiritual understandings, and that requires a particular um, awareness or something present. So
And like willingness to go deep.
yeah,
There's ways that I've seen this happen in many different ceremonies. There's ways that we subconsciously don't allow for that depth to occur. I mean, I've experienced it with working with people one-on-one, whether it's an emotion code or even just as like on one-on-one coaching and mentoring.
For sure.
There's only so much depth. Like I'm always curious about going as deep as possible, but that's just because I'm comfortable with going deep. Like I mean, I was a whale once, so like we go deep, you know. Like I feel enough trust that if I go too deep, someone somewhere is gonna pull me out. I didn't always have. I can't say that this has been always, because that would be a lie. Like, that's not true.
Yeah.
I would say like because of, I believe because I've had what you were talking about the medicine of being fully seen, like what that does for you. I feel like what that has done for me in a huge way is allowed for me to rest into, it's almost like, you know how they always say that people are mirrors to each other. What I felt actually, not in the way that they say that how that's used, but I feel like people have put up a mirror in front of me with love and be like, hey, I see you. Do you see you? I see you. And in a way that they're not projecting stuff. It's like there's a fine line there, because they're not projecting things on me. They're actually truly seeing me, which has allowed for me to be comfortable in being seen. It's a weird thing to try to explain with words, but because of that, I've seen it in many ways have people, maybe they don't have trust, maybe it's trauma, maybe it's like that's just where they're at, and like everyone's allowed to be where they're at.
Absolutely.
And because of that, like there's just, you maybe just go this deep.
Yeah.
The potential is to go like off screen, you know? And I've actually felt that with a few Kontomble ceremonies recently of like, oh, we could really go deep if we wanted to.
Totally.
And there is this like this feeling in my body that I get when it's like, oh, we're not fully, there's some subconscious like agreement of like, this is how deep we'll go. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's how deep we're gonna go. This is what like, this is what can be held in this space.
Yeah, totally.
Trust in that. And then I'm like, and like they're ready to deep dive. Like, so as you're sharing, I'm like, oh, okay, this makes more sense to me now.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. So I feel like that is, the potential is so there to go.
Yeah, you can feel it. Yeah. I know we're about to close. I sense that, but I could feel, I'm like, yeah, there's I believe they're working with us in these ways, and it is connected to what you're mentioning in some way. This is what they're sharing right now. It is in some way connected also to what you're mentioning with like the cities, and if that, and how they're, as you're mentioning, I mean, you experienced them here too. So like with this school that's starting at the end of March, the shamanic school, our shamanic school, they'll be there, and likely if somebody sees spirit, they'll see them moving through the space, and they're doing the kind of dynamic thing that they do. But yeah, and that's my sense, is it'll be, of course you're welcome, you know that. But I think it's going to be people that just have been, maybe I've been working with them for longer or something, that I think it's going to be at the turn of the seasons, that will, and it's like you said too, it's that you sense, and it's people that are, have worked on themselves more. They're humbling, they can be humbling. I remember, some of the first ceremonies being with them in Burkina, and they'll say all sorts of things. They're like, what did it take? We had to get a force to get you here, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, how many times did I get yelled at by the Kontomble? And then I'll just be like, wide-eyed, like, eyes just big. I was like, okay, sorry, Kontomble. Like, you're coming here acting like you're a tourist. It took us a force to get you. I was like, sorry, Kontomble. You don't. Like, it's okay. Say you're sorry. Just like, we do our human part, like shed our shame or whatever you feel like, whatever that it brings up for us in our human. You do our, practices of healing, that we shed the shame, and they're like, okay, I'm sorry. okay, I'm here, Kontomble. What is it that you need? Sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, but of course you understand this. Anyway, obviously I could talk to you forever. Like,
I know, like, for those who, if you're still with us,
yeah.
I thought it was like, yeah, we'll like keep this to an hour. We're definitely over an hour, like a lot over an hour.
Totally. So,
I was like laughing as we were like, well, we're gonna try to keep this to an hour, and also like that's probably not gonna happen.
yeah, like 5 hours later. Oh, we were trying to do it 2 hours. Sorry about that.
And I have like a timer going that's like showing me the time. Like, it's all right. Like, it's just trusting with the flow of spirit. Well, you kind of already named my last question that I was gonna ask you of what are you creating?
Yeah.
It's actually a really beautiful question. This woman in Bali, I met her and she's like, instead of saying like, what do you do? She was like, what are you creating? I was like, ooh, I like that question.
Nice. That's really nice.
I like that. I'm gonna adopt that question from now on. But you are creating what you are creating is the school.
Yeah.
Oran and Riven, maybe? I hope I said that right.
Yeah, I'm still working on it too, the Gaelic pronunciation. Oran and Riven. Yeah, something like that. The Venusian song, yeah, is Shamanic Healing School that starts in late March that if I even tried to start talking about what it is, of course we'd be here for an hour. So there's a video about that. Go to the website.
Is there?
I can say, saying like pouring all the elixirs and everything, all the beings that were with me were, suffice to say, we're pouring the different elixirs, or they're pouring the elixirs in through me, however they're doing that. That's what it is. And then we have the sacred village that we are that we're coming together once a month in the tiny shiny wings of fire. So both of those can be found through earthsamulet.com. And then this will be on my YouTube channel probably today. So people will be like, yeah, Natalie again.
Mine will be a week later.
Okay, so thanks for letting me post it soon. And then other than that, I was telling you just right before we started recording, I was like, I saw you on Clubhouse. So
find us on Clubhouse.
Come to the Clubhouse. I just joined. So if you're on Clubhouse, come join us. Natalie and I might pop up on a room or something. We'll have a little multi-dimensional room.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Liv. I honor you and the multi-dimensional being that you are. Thank you so much. And all the multi-dimensional beings that are with you. Like I got kicked in the head. And thank you so much for joining me in this experience in Cosmic Earth Conversations. And I love you and look forward to the video that we'll be doing next week.
Oh yeah, I'm super excited about that. So we'll have a little multi-dimensional conversation again.
Yeah, correct. I love multi-dimensional conversations. I wish I had them all the time. So thank you so much. And if you are still by chance listening to this video, still thank you so much.
Yeah.
I hope this has been supportive for you.
Yeah,
thank you
so much.
Have a great day.
And see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Cosmic Earth Conversations. I hope it was supportive for you. And please take a moment to like and subscribe to this video and to this channel so you can be informed of the next time an episode drops. Many blessings to you on your journey.